Scott Morrison's exit strategy. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee because we're going to have a look at Scott Morrison's latest media release after the meeting of National Cabinet. Now, will this be our version of Building Back Better that everyone has heard? And what is our Prime Minister requiring of us in order to open up the country again? And will there be a mention of new normal or COVID normal? Let's watch and see, everyone. This is a long one, so grab your coffee.
G'day. Many Australians today will be listening on in their home cities or where they live while they are subject to COVID restrictions. That is particularly the case in my hometown of Sydney, which I will be returning to later today after having been at the G7 and then, of course, going through the quarantine period here in Canberra. This is a difficult time when people are dealing with the restrictions, but that has been our experience over these past 18 months as our country has battled COVID-19 like every country has. Every country has had their share of success and also of failures over this period of time. COVID-19, managing your way through COVID-19 is...
Just remember, when this started in 2019 and we're now in 2021. 2 weeks, everyone. 2 weeks. Just to take the edge off our medical facilities. Just 2 weeks.
Uncharted waters. And anyone who thinks there is always a pathway that is without risk, that is without vulnerabilities, clearly doesn't understand the significant challenge that all nations face in dealing with COVID-19. But those who understand this best are Australians who deal with this every single day. And today was an important meeting of the National Cabinet. It was our 45th meeting of the National Cabinet. At no time in our federation have state premiers and chief ministers of our territories and the Prime Minister met together with such frequency to deal with a national challenge. A challenge that has gone on now for a long time, and there is still quite a journey ahead of us. And we will continue to meet. And we will continue to work together as best as we possibly can to ensure that Australia's COVID-19 response is world-class. Today we reaffirmed our commitment to that task in the National Cabinet. But we didn't do that just in words, we've done it in deeds. The good news I have for Australians who are subject to restrictions today is we have agreed a new deal for Australians on the pathway out of COVID-19.
Well, this is good. Hopefully this will finally be the plan that we want to see. The plan to end this. Because that can address a lot of people's anxiety, to be quite honest.
A pathway from a pre-vaccination period which is focused on the suppression of the virus, on community transmission cases, to one that sees us manage COVID-19 as an infectious disease like any other in our community. Now, there is still some...
That's good. That's the path that you want to take, to get to the point where it's just managed as everything else. I'm just worried about next time.
Pathway from here to there. But the pathway we have agreed today, I think, gives all Australians encouragement and I think much needed hope in what has been a very difficult time. We have affirmed today a plan that has 4 phases that will be finalised in coming weeks based on the expert medical evidence and modelling work that is being done by the Doherty Institute and channelled through the task force that was established some months ago to do this work that first initiated...
I'm just skeptical of all modelling after all the stuff that came, all the UK modelling was proven incorrect. But, oh well.
I did that work in relation to the Alpha strain of COVID-19, and that was reported to National Cabinet several weeks ago, and now is finalising its work on the Delta strain. The plan has 4 components. The first of those we are currently in now, and it is based on the agreed principles that were set out before National Cabinet that I took to them today. So we agreed to formulate a national plan to transition Australia's national COVID response from its current pre-vaccination settings, focusing on suppression of community transmission, to post-vaccination settings, focused on prevention of serious illness, hospitalisation and fatality, and the public health management of other infectious diseases.
I thought that was the strategy to begin with, but maybe it just changed, or I didn't understand what the whole taking the edge off the demand on public health facilities was.
We agreed in principle that that plan consists of the following phases, each triggered by the achievement of a vaccination threshold expressed as a percentage of the eligible population, that is 16 plus, based on the scientific modelling conducted for the COVID-19 risk analysis and response task force that I've referred to. The first phase is the one we're in. Vaccinate, prepare and pilot, where we continue to suppress the virus. That involves the implementation of the National Vaccination Plan to offer every Australian an opportunity to be vaccinated with the necessary doses of the relevant vaccine as soon as possible. And Lieutenant General Fruin will update you on that. But today we'll be seeing another record day of vaccinations. Today we will hit 8 million. 8 million doses administered, and that means 1 million doses in just 8 days. In the month of June, we hit almost 3.5 million doses. Purely achieving that rate of vaccination between now and the end of the year, with the additional supplies that we are expecting over the course of this year, we believe will put us in that position by the end of this year. To temporarily reduce commercial inbound passenger arrivals to all major ports by 50% from current caps, to reduce the pressure on quarantine facilities due to the increased risks of the Delta strain of the virus.
Well, there you go. Our Premier got what she wanted.
Now, while the reduction of those caps will certainly, right across the system, obviously take some pressure off, as we have observed over the course of these past 18 months, that alone does not provide any fail-safe regarding any potential breaches. We've seen breaches occur predominantly as a result of infection control procedures and human error and so on. Those issues need to continue to be strengthened. So simply reducing the caps doesn't necessarily provide a fail-safe, but because of the particular virulency of the Delta strain, it is believed that that is a prudent action while we remain in the suppression phase of the virus. Lockdowns in the current phase to be only used as a last resort.
That would be nice. That would be nice if they only used as a last resort. Wouldn't that be good? At least he's verbalising that, and then we can hopefully hold our politicians to account.
Was agreed today. The Commonwealth will facilitate increased commercial flights, those are those facilitated commercial flights that we have been running, to increase international repatriations during this period of reduced caps at the commercial caps at the major airports, and they will be channelled into Darwin for quarantine at the National Resilience Facility at Howard Springs. So where we will lose some capacity for inbound flights of those coming back through commercial flights, the Commonwealth will directly seek to mitigate that by upping, wherever possible, those commercially facilitated flights that the Commonwealth is pursuing. Now, I would note in recent days and weeks that we have seen demand for those facilitated flights run by the Commonwealth having actually dipped. And so those flights we've been bringing in have not been full because there hasn't been the demand to take those up. Now, I suspect that will change now with the commercial flight restrictions, then we will see that supply being fully taken up, and we will be enhancing that, increasing that from major ports to ensure that we can keep the pace of bringing Australians home. We will also extend the International Freight Subsidy Scheme to ensure maintenance of essential freight supply lines by air impacted by the reduction of commercial caps at international airports. As I stressed today, reducing the caps of commercial flights will come at a cost to the Commonwealth Government. So this is not a costless exercise. Medicines, vaccines come in by plane. Essential freight comes in by plane. So the Commonwealth's decision to support this reduction in those commercial caps comes at a fiscal cost to Commonwealth taxpayers. But we agree that it is an important part of managing this most virulent strain during the course of this suppression phase. Over the course of the current phase we are in, that we will trial and pilot with individual jurisdictions the introduction of alternative quarantine options, including home quarantine for returning vaccinated travellers. The work that we have already done, and Professor Kelly may want to add to this, shows that a vaccinated person doing quarantine for 7 days is stronger than an unvaccinated person doing quarantine for 14 days. So there's clear medical evidence to suggest that vaccination means that shorter periods of quarantine is possible without any compromise of the health and safety standards that is currently delivered by a 14-day quarantine for unvaccinated persons. So getting vaccinated actually clearly helps, and the medical evidence backs that up, particularly for quarantine. South Australia has indicated that they will be seeking to work with the Commonwealth, having the necessary digital applications to support that. It would be a very small-scale trial, but we want to make sure that before it goes to any scaled-up use, that we have worked through that. And
is he hinting at the vaccination passport and a trial occurring in South Australia? Well, this is how we're going to build back better, everyone. You've got to hope there's no political wins that would potentially use that information for nefarious purposes.
This will be a very transparent exercise with other states and territories. We will continue to expand the commercial trials for limited entry of student economic visa holders. A number of states are doing that.
Okay, no, he's not talking about that. He's talking about the limited quarantining periods, only 7 days instead of 14 days. Here we go, international students, guys, all of those of you in property, academia.
And so we will recognise and adopt the Commonwealth's existing digital Medicare vaccination certificate that is automatically generated for every vaccination and registered on the air. So that is something that's already there now. By the end of this month, as I've said to you before, it will be at another level, which would see it being able to be incorporated in things like Apple wallets and the like.
Oh, well, no, sorry. Wait a minute. He is talking about that. So you'll be able to incorporate your certificate into your phone and show it. Okay. Well, there you go, everyone. That's what's happening.
That we will put in place a digital vaccination authentication at border. That we will prepare now, as we already are, the vaccine booster program. And there will be a further review of the National Hotel Quarantine Network to ensure that the standards, infection control procedures and the like are being adhered to. That's phase one. That's the phase we're in. That's the suppression phase. That's vaccinate, prepare and pilot. The post-vaccination phase will be entered once we reach a threshold of vaccination to be determined by the modelling process we're currently engaged in.
They're not going to tell us the percentage. It's a shame. Be nice to know.
This will be a scientific number. Won't be a political number, won't be an arbitrary number. It will be a number.
Will it be actual science or political science? Hey, because political science is still science.
That we can have confidence means that when you reach that level of vaccination in the population, which may include specific targets on vaccination of vulnerable populations such as those over 70, and we're about at 70% now, I think, JJ, on vaccination of first dose for those over 70. That's the gate. that we have to get through. Once we get through that gate, and that'll be determined by the scientific evidence, then we will move into a phase where we seek to minimise serious illness, hospitalisation and fatality as a result of COVID-19. That's the objective. And our measures, I stress, may include, these are still to be determined, but we agreed today that we could say that measures may include the following once we reach that: to ease restrictions on vaccinated residents, such as lockdowns and border controls.
Notice that, on vaccinated residents.
That lockdowns would only occur in extreme circumstances to prevent escalating hospitalisation and fatality.
I thought that was wasn't that the reason to begin with? There's such a significant economic impact. Lockdowns have now been accepted. They've now been accepted. People think they're what's keeping them safe, even though there's mathematical evidence, there's modelling that proves or that indicates that their impact on mortality resulting from this isn't significant. It's not demonstrable.
To restore inbound passenger caps at that time to previous levels for unvaccinated returning travellers, and then even larger caps for those who are vaccinated. So we would see higher levels of arrivals. The caps would apply at what they have been up until now for the unvaccinated, and then there would be a higher cap again above that for vaccinated return travellers. That we would be allowing a capped entry of student and economic visa holders subject to quarantine arrangements and availability, that we will then introduce those new quarantine arrangements for vaccinated residents based on the trials undertaken in the current stage, and then we would either be implementing the vaccine booster program at that time or preparing it, depending on the time and frame of hitting that first mark on vaccination. The third phase is called the consolidation phase, and that is to manage COVID-19 consistent with public health management of other infectious diseases. Now, what does that mean? It's likely we may be in that position in phase 2, but in phase 3, that basically means that the hospitalisation and fatality rates that you'd see from COVID-19 would be like the flu, or arguably better. And we're already seeing evidence of that in other jurisdictions that have higher levels of vaccination. So when it is like the flu, we should treat it like...
When did they stop using the word countries and everything became jurisdictions? When did that happen? Did you notice that? I'm starting to notice that more and more. We're all in different jurisdictions. We're not in different countries. It's just an interesting little thing to notice.
Like the flu. And that means no lockdowns. This is the measures may include to be finalised. No lockdowns. The vaccine booster program underway. Exempting vaccinated residents from all domestic restrictions. Abolishing caps on...
So there'll be a two-class system then. You'll have no restrictions if you can show your vaccine certificate on your Apple phone. Well, remember, kids, there was a time where you could go to the shops and you didn't have to prove. Hand over your medical data.
Returning vaccinated travellers, allowing further increased capped entry of student, economic and humanitarian visa holders. Very high caps we're talking about at that point. Lifting all restrictions on outbound travel for vaccinated persons, and extending the travel bubble for unrestricted travel to new candidate countries such as Singapore, the Pacific, and there potentially may be other candidates by the time we reach that stage. Moving into the consolidation phase will be based on a further benchmark determined by that modelling process. And then the final phase, which is the penultimate phase to moving to completely back to normal, where you would have measures may include allow uncapped inbound arrivals for all vaccinated persons without quarantine, and allowing uncapped arrivals of non-vaccinated travels subject to pre-flight and on-arrival testing. So you may still have at that point unvaccinated people coming to Australia at that final phase. If they are picked up on testing, there'd be pre- and post-flight testing, then they'd of course go into quarantine, which would be common sense. Now, we've agreed that the COVID-19 Risk Analysis and Response Task Force, which is led by Secretary Gaetjens, They will be tasked to make recommendations on finalising that plan. I think you can see from the level of detail I've set out to you today, it's already got some pretty good guidance as to how that will be filled in, and they'll be tasked to do that and bring that forward to National Cabinet. I don't anticipate that will be done for next week, but we would hope to be able to do that over the course of this month. What's key to that is the modelling work. We have to get that right. It's a critical number, and we need to be absolutely sure about that in framing where we go to from here. And that will include, of course, them recommending those vaccination targets for each of the phase of the plan based on that modelling. So what it means is Australia gets vaccinated, Australia is able to live differently. Winning in the post-vaccination phase looks very different to winning in the phase we're in now. Winning now means we suppress the virus as best as we can, which means that from time to time, such as we're experiencing New South Wales, we have to go through these experiences. That's regrettable, and I have every confidence, having heard further from the New South Wales Premier today, that they're continuing to get on top of that, and you would have heard that from their report earlier today. But we will continue to fight on in this period, but we need and will continue to do everything we possibly can to vaccinate the population as fast as possible. And I think the performance in the most recent June month indicates just how much we've been able to ramp up. 1 million doses in 8 days. 3.5 million doses or thereabouts in 1 month. We keep that pace up and we'll get this done, Australia. And we get this done, Australia, and you can see what's on the other side. We've made it very clear today what's on the other side. You get vaccinated and we get there, and this all changes. In other items, which I'll report very briefly on, I briefed National Cabinet today that the Commonwealth has agreed this week, took that through the Expenditure Review Committee this week, extending out for a further 12 months the National Partnership Agreement on the COVID response, which is the cost sharing of expenses relating to health costs in the states and territories on managing the COVID-19 pandemic. I note that those costs to date, the Commonwealth has provided to the states and territories $5.765 billion. So let there be no suggestion that the Commonwealth is not sharing the load here. We're more than sharing the load, particularly when you add in what we're doing on the economic side of the equation. So we will continue that out for a further 12 months. We anticipate that will cost some $752 million over the course of this next 12 months from the Commonwealth's perspective. We also had the opportunity to meet with the Commissioner of the Border Force. We were able to work through what the international arrivals and departures figures were, noting in particular that in the month of June, 83.9% of international arrivals to Australia were returning Australians, 83.9%, and we were able to go through a lot more of the detail of the way that Border Force administers the exemptions, both on inbound and outbound, and set up a process with the First Secretaries for states and territories to be more continually informed of the facts on those issues to enable them to have that confidence. We also noted that we continue to make progress on getting Australians home, but for everyone we get home, you often get others who join that list, but we have seen that number come down to 34,000, and we're going to work very hard over the next few months where we will have fewer commercial flights coming, but we will have increased facilitated flights from the Commonwealth to get Australians home. So a new deal for Australians today, to get us to the other side. I'll hand over to Professor Kelly.
Thank you, PM. So just briefly on the epidemiology, and I think...
Well, that at least gives us an insight into the 4 stages, or the plan of our Prime Minister, and what do you think? At least there's a path out of this. No more lockdowns, hopefully. A lot of restrictions, a lot of showing your medical data, a lot of benefits for those vaccinated as opposed to those who choose not to, but at least there is a plan out of it. It's encouraging to see. Feels like there hasn't been for some time. What do you think, everyone? Now, if you're frustrated with these suggestions, I encourage you to start to become politically active. A lot of people haven't been. People are too busy. They're working too much. They don't have the time. They don't have the interest. They want the politicians to worry about that. They donkey vote. You're never going to change the system if you don't actually try and change the system. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one in the comments down below. I'm encouraged to see there's actually a strategy now that's publicly being put forward. I think that will fill a lot of people with confidence. It may not be the strategy that everyone wants, but at least there's something there. Anyway, take care, guys. If you're a fan of the channel and want to support the content I bring to you here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can sign up for SelfWealth or Stake. Use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.